Hey everyone, how you doing? So my name's Eric King. I'm the Deputy Director of an NGO in London called Privacy International. 1 year ago, I was here talking about the Five Eyes, how they were formed, where they began. And we ran through, after World War II, 70 years ago, this spying alliance was created. And far from being separate signals intelligence agencies, the spying agency of the UK, GCHQ, the spying agency of the US, the NSA, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada have instead been acting as one, as a single force, intercepting all of our private communications and sharing them with each other by default. They have shared bases in Oman and in Australia. They get promoted. So if you're a GCHQ officer and you want to go and spend some time at NSA, your lunchroom pass gets you into the lunchroom at Fort Meade in the US. Such is their level of integration. And their officers, as a result, often get confused about who exactly they're working for. Spies that work for GCHQ and NSA have said the national product, the communications that we're intercepting, is often indistinguishable. They don't know what's come from GCHQ and what has come from the NSA. The cooperation between the countries, particularly in SIGINT, is so close that it becomes very difficult to know who is doing what. It's just organizational mess. Now, this is so important because unless we understand how our intelligence agencies work internationally, who they're cooperating with, then we cannot hold them to account. We cannot ensure that their actions are being properly regulated by law and that they're not playing games of jurisdictional arbitrage, playing off each other's legal frameworks to reduce all of our rights to the lowest common denominator. So the theme of this conference this year is Finding Europe. We've talked about the Five Eyes. We're now going to talk about the Nine Eyes, because oh, how I wish there were only 5 eyes. So this is basically all we know about the Nine Eyes. It's the Five Eyes plus France, the Netherlands, Denmark, and Norway. We don't know when they were formed. We don't know what their purpose is. The only reference we have to them is in the documents released by Edward Snowden. The intelligence officers I've spoken to say that most of the time this group is focused on Afghanistan and Russia, but there's massive amounts of raw intelligence sharing going on between them. We don't have any public framework. We don't have any acknowledgement in any treaty or in any of the parliaments. These are the kind of issues that we're still having to unpick. But the 9 eyes are not the big player in Europe. The 14 eyes are the big player in Europe, also known as SIGINT Seniors Europe or SIGINT Seniors Europe. This is the 5 eyes plus France, Netherlands, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Italy, Spain, Belgium, and Germany. Now, we know a tiny bit more, and when I say a tiny bit, I mean I'm going to tell you everything I know, and I can only tell you about 30 seconds worth. They were formed in 1982, and that's it. That's all we know. We have one reference found about them in every single document that I've read, and we have a small library at the NGO I work at, Privacy International, which is just full of every single book about intelligence agencies, their history, autobiographies of officers, everything. We really nerd out about this stuff. And there isn't a single reference. Only one has been found, and it's here, which says that there's a regional database system in Europe where the SIGINT organizations of the NSA, BND, GCHQ, DGSE in France, Italian, etc., share raw data. So again, this is the existence of another signals intelligence sharing framework where they're sharing massive amounts of raw private communications that each one of us send, and we know almost nothing about them. But there's more. SIGINT Seniors Europe is the closest group of those tied to the Five Eyes, but many, many more intelligence agencies across Europe cooperate with the Five Eyes. And here we've added Austria, Czech Republic, Croatia, Poland. And so all of a sudden, you can see that most of Europe is cooperating in some way with NSA, in some way with GCHQ. And this is a bigger problem than just Europe. We have the similar thing here. This was Signal Seniors Europe. We also have Signal Seniors Pacific as well. So how close are these relationships? Well, it's important to say that when you enter into a third-party relationship, and that's what these things are called, this isn't a trivial exercise. This is a declassified document from an internal NSA quarterly called the Cryptologic Quarterly. And it talks about how obtaining material and instigating these relationships is a very, very significant task. It requires staff coordination, material handlers. In some circumstances, they choose not to enter into relationships because the NSA is just not getting good value for money. When you enter these things, there's a big quid pro quo. You really have to be exchanging something for something else, right? This isn't a one-way flow. More recently, there was a document disclosed by Edward Snowden that gave us a bit more information about how the NSA thinks about these third-party relationships. And they said here that they form these when the SIGINT exchanges have increased in volume and complexity, or you need rapid, direct exchange of information. The NSA says that in exchange for providing the third party, so this is BND or similar, we provide them unique accesses with technical solutions and/or access to related technology. So here, BND has the geographical location, the access to big undersea fiber optic cables that are coming in and out of the country. NSA want a part of that, GCHQ want a part of that, and so they provide them with the equipment, they provide them with the software in exchange for them getting some of that information back. Now, NSA does it just for the information, but also NSA will go further. It might be willing to share advanced techniques in return for that partner's willingness to do something politically risky. Now, Edward Snowden's told us about all of this, and when he was presenting to the European Parliament, he explained that it goes much deeper than this. He talked about something called the Foreign Affairs Directorate at the National Security Agency. And here's how he explained what it does. One of the foremost activities of the Foreign Affairs Division is to pressure or incentivize EU member states to change their laws to enable mass surveillance. Lawyers from the NSA, as well as the UK GCHQ, work very hard to search for loopholes in laws and constitutional protections that they can use to justify indiscriminate dragnet surveillance operations. In recent public memory, we've seen these legal guidance operations occur in Sweden and the Netherlands. So here NSA is saying, we want access to your cables. We want access to the information you've got, and you're not spying on enough people. So we're going to come and we're going to pressure you and encourage you to change your laws or work out legal loopholes that you can exploit to make yourselves feel better that what you're doing is constitutionally and human rights compliant. This is a map of the undersea cables that flow in and out of Europe. And you can see just how many the SIGINT partners that we've talked about have access to. Snowden said that when you start getting these new restrictions in place, when you've changed the law in these countries, the next thing that NSA do once they've successfully subverted or helped repeal legal restrictions against unconstitutional mass surveillance, it encourages them to perform access operations. These are the operations to gain access to bulk communications of all major telecommunications providers in the jurisdiction. This is one of the programs that we learned about. It's called Rampart. And this is doing exactly what Edward Snowden has described here. Here, country X, one of the SIGINT Senior Europe partners, has access to an undersea fiber optic cable. They tap it. The NSA or GCHQ has provided the technology for them to do that. And you can see here, they then get a copy of it while it's being processed domestically. In 2011, the NSA spent 91 million on encouraging these kinds of operations in these partner countries. There's now 13 sites doing this kind of work around the world. The locations we're still unclear of, but we can begin to guess at what some of them are. One of them is almost certainly Germany. Just yesterday, we found out, the day before yesterday, we found out a new cooperation between the BND and GCHQ. And here, in very, very clear terms, it says that the British Secret Service, GCHQ, offered the BND advanced acquisition and processing systems if Germany would tap into the transit data lines and exchange the raw data back with GCHQ. This isn't just in Germany. We've had exactly the same thing in Denmark, which is also thought to be another Rampart A country. Here, in a secret document that was released by Snowden, it said that they wanted to remind the Danes of the long-term relationship looking at cable accesses. Now, in the Netherlands, we have the same thing. Now, the Netherlands is an interesting legal circumstance because they can't do large bulk interception of cables. The law prohibits that. The only thing that they can do in bulk is something that comes from the sky, from satellites. So anything that isn't cable-bound is okay, but if it's through a cable, the Netherlands, the Dutch are not allowed to look at it. Now, GCHQ's not been very happy about this. And so, as part of their operation, from an internal GCHQ document, we found out that GCHQ said they have some legislative issues that they need to work through before their legal environment would allow them to operate in the way that GCHQ does. We are providing legal advice on how we have tackled some of these issues to Dutch lawyers. Now, here's one of the questions that I find really interesting about intelligence sharing. So the Dutch aren't allowed to tap undersea fiber optic cables, okay? But GCHQ are. So, can the Dutch receive, in bulk, information that's come from a source, the undersea cables, that they're not allowed to get? Unfortunately, yes. The Oversight Committee looked at this, and they said that they're not going to look at the legality of where the information comes from, despite the fact that they've admitted that they are receiving data in bulk from foreign partners. And this is the problem with intelligence sharing. It creates this race to the bottom, where the lowest protections that are offered in a country are the ones that are used and explained. It's the same in Sweden. Now, Sweden's had a particularly close relationship with the NSA, stretching back 50 years. But the Five Eyes had a fight amongst themselves 8 years ago. Previously, GCHQ was the lead agency with Sweden, and anything dealing with communications interception, it was a GCHQ lead. NSA had the lead on electronic interception, ELINT. They renegotiated this, but what they had to promise each other, and this is what this document says, is that they needed to keep each other informed of what they were doing with the FRA, and they must always exchange all information that comes through. And in 2011, the FRA provided new access to the NSA on the undersea fiber optic cable interception that's taking place in Sweden. In Spain, it's unclear just how far the CNI, the Center for National Intelligence, is going, but documents have told us that GCHQ are working with them on IP-focused interception. In France, it's a similar story, DGSE there. Also, according to leaked documents, GCHQ has said that they've been very keen to provide presentations on their work, which included cipher detection in high-speed bearers. High-speed bearers is spook lingo for undersea fiber optic cables. And so we have this system where different states are now passing laws allowing themselves to do mass surveillance. They're being encouraged and helped to do so by GCHQ and by NSA, who are providing the legal framework and patting them on the back, allowing them to feel good about what they're doing. But the states still feel that they need to protect their own citizens, of course. And so what happens is that this all gets negotiated out. So Britain says to NSA, okay, we're going to tap these cables. You can have a copy, but you can't look for Brits. Okay, you can't look for Brits. Germany says the same thing to NSA. Okay, we'll let you tap the cables, we'll give you a copy, we'll take a copy as well, but NSA, you can't look for Germans. Same thing they say in Sweden, same thing they say in the Netherlands. And of course, that doesn't get us very far. It means, for one, that my communication can still be intercepted by any of the other intelligence agencies in Europe who owe me no obligations whatsoever. Only GCHQ at the moment are even attempting to provide me with any obligations. And of course, once that interception has taken place and it all goes into the same pot, that first negotiation is useless anyway. And Snowden told us about this. He said the result of this is a European Bazaar where EU member states like Denmark may give the NSA access to a tapping center on the unenforceable condition that NSA doesn't search it for Danes, and Germany may give the NSA access to another on the condition it doesn't search for Germans. Yet the two tapping centers might be on the 2 points but on exactly the same cable. So NSA simply captures the communications of the German citizens when they're going through Denmark, and the Danish citizens as they go through Germany. All the while, none of the legal frameworks that they've set amongst themselves have been broken. Every state can put their hands on their heart and say, we're protecting you, our citizens. We've negotiated strong against these big intelligence agencies. Don't you worry. And everyone gets to feel very, very proud of themselves. And so this is all being justified under these very, very broad legal frameworks. There's only 4 states that have really actively legislated for strategic surveillance, although we can add France to this list with the new law that came through yesterday. All of them hint at the idea that what you're spying on are foreigners. We're looking outside our borders, and as a result, we don't owe them any protections. And when you look through the legislation, that's what you find. There's not a single law in Europe that offers any protections when you intercept the communications for people not inside your jurisdiction. And when you receive information or share information, the laws treat it in a very peculiar way. Many of these laws were created and drafted as though intelligence sharing was me having a PDF document that I keep in a manila envelope and that I pass to you. That's how they're constructed. And when you see the debates in some of the countries when their laws have been passed, that's what was thought of about intelligence sharing, that it was singular bits of refined information. And that isn't what intelligence sharing is now. It isn't what happens between signals intelligence agencies. It's billions of records being shared every single day amongst these states. Our laws are not taking this into account, they're not reflecting this, and we're losing for it as a result. So, what have we been doing? Well, we've been trying to get access to these arrangements. So we asked GCHQ for a copy of them. And we asked them for a copy of the Five Eyes arrangement, and we also asked them a copy of their canteen menu. They said they couldn't provide us both a copy of the Five Eyes arrangement or their canteen menu for national security. So we filed, thank you. And so we filed to the European Court of Human Rights demanding that they provide us with a copy of their canteen menu and a copy of the Five Eyes arrangement. Now, these things are so important because it's how the intelligence sharing works that underpins how this whole system can be understood and how the loopholes are exploited that infringe all of our fundamental rights. We took another case against GCHQ, and in the course of our litigation, we forced them to disclose for the first time a description of how the intelligence sharing works. This is it. This is all we got. They had a secret hearing where just the tribunal and the government got to talk amongst themselves. We weren't even told the date when this was taking part, but we forced and we managed to get a hold of this. And what we found is that GCHQ are being very, very clever, as they are, in how they read the law. Our politicians tell us our agencies don't intentionally circumvent the law. Well, that's true, so long as you have a very particular understanding of what circumvention means. And here, we find out that they don't consider GCHQs intentionally circumventing the law when they couldn't technically get the information any other way. And so, GCHQ would argue that it could not technically intercept all communications going in and out of the US. So, it's not a circumvention of the law for them to be able to receive all of that information without a warrant. This is how they're justifying it. This is how they're getting away with it. What they also told the court is that when they share information between agencies, they have strong internal safeguards underpinning how it all works. Now, we didn't find out what they were. The court wouldn't tell us. But a few weeks later, more documents were released, and we got a bit of a hint of what some of these things could be. This is a document dealing with GCSB, who are the New Zealand intelligence agency, and it's talking about what happens when the US wants to get access to the raw intercepted data that GCSB have. And they talk about the strong internal safeguards that are in place. First, an analyst needs to log into a system called iLearn. It then needs to select a PowerPoint presentation called New Zealand SID7. It then reads the presentation, and then they have to take a multiple choice open book test. If they feel that they've passed the test, they then copy and paste the results into a Word document. That's it. That's the strong internal safeguards that they have to ensure that the analysts in each country are respecting the laws of the other nation. A self-assessed open book test where you copy and paste the answers into a Word document. This is the biggest spying alliance that's ever been created, and this is the legal system that is protecting us. I couldn't believe it when I saw this. I genuinely thought that they would do better. How wrong I was. So, we sued GCHQ, and we lost on a lot of points. On each one of those points we've lost, we've appealed to the European Court of Human Rights. But we won on one point. They said that in the course of our suing GCHQ, they had to reveal this information, but it was only because this information was revealed that it was now legal. But until this information was revealed, it was illegal. So the court said that all intelligence sharing from NSA to GCHQ for the last 70 years was unlawful. Every bit of information, the 112 billion text messages that are exchanged every single day, the 98 million records from geolocation shared to GCHQ every single day, completely unlawful. And we're making good use of this. Because it's been declared unlawful, we think that you, every single person in here, has a right to find out whether your communications were part of those unlawfully shared. whether your fundamental rights were breached. And so we've set up a platform where you can enter in some details, and we're going to assist you in completing forms that you can send to the tribunal, where they have an obligation to tell you if your communications were part of those unlawfully shared. So please, 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 if you haven't already done it, go to privacyinternational.org/illegal spying, and you can sign up to find out whether your communications were part of those illegally shared from NSA to GCHQ. One of the other points that we lost to the tribunal was that we were trying to argue that GCHQ owe you, assuming, well, we're all outside the UK, and so now I've lost my rights. GCHQ don't treat my communications with any additional safeguards. So every single one of us here, we were saying, should be treated equally as if you're in the UK. The court didn't like that. The court didn't like that. But the reason that they gave for why they weren't finding in our favor is because the number of people that they'd need to get individual warrants for would be too large. They say that they can't offer every single person here the same protections as those inside the UK because they're spying on too many people. This is what the court found persuasive. Now, we're talking about all of this because our intelligence agencies they're outpacing us. They are finding loopholes, and they're staying one step ahead. They're staying one step ahead even more of our politicians. When Nicky Hagar, an investigative journalist, wrote his book about GCSB, he said, he got David Lange, who was a New Zealand Prime Minister, very well respected, and the ex-New Zealand Prime Minister said, it wasn't until he read this book about the New Zealand intelligence agencies that he had any idea that New Zealand had been committed to an international integrated electronic spying network. He didn't know. He said it's an outrage that him and other ministers were told so little, and raises the question of who they ultimately saw themselves answerable. Now, a leaked document has said that NSA are feeling quite comfortable with the situation that they're in. They're saying for a variety of reasons, our intelligence relationships are rarely disrupted by foreign political perturbations, international or domestic. And they explain in this document that in many of the foreign partners' capitals, very few senior officials outside of the intelligence apparatus even know about any signals intelligence connection to the US at all. The new NSA commander has gone a bit further, and he said, clearly, there are some nations that have been very vocal, very visible in their frustration and their unhappiness. But we have a level of capability and reach that few, if any, can replicate. The value that NSA provides is almost irreplaceable. They know that they're the big brother in the room. They know that they're the one pushing for mass surveillance in all these states around the world, forcing countries to weaken their domestic protections, and creating this system where we're in a global race to the bottom. Where people are trying to hold them accountable, they're putting pressure. They're saying, no, you can't find out this information. And I say, this is what we now need to do. We need to expose these relationships. We need to shine a light on how these organizations work together in our courts and in our parliaments so that we can bring our intelligence agencies once and for all under the rule of law. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Eric. Yes, already, hand, okay.
Hey, I really enjoyed your talk, and I like the work that you do. I have one question, and I mean it with all due respect, but it won't sound like that, so I'm sorry in advance. But how can you believe the bullshit that you said about the law protecting us when it is so clear that for the entire time we've had liberal democracies, intelligence communities have crept up and circumvented the law. Isn't it the case that law alone is simply insufficient to prevent these people from doing these things? If they cared at all about the fucking law, they wouldn't be stripping people of their citizenship and drone striking them, as Theresa May does with the GCHQ intelligence information. So why do we want a legal solution? I mean, how can the law solve this? It hasn't solved this. That's insanity to continue to try to use the law. So what is the actual thing that we can actionably do?
So I'm an optimist.
Me too.
I agree. The law doesn't solve the world's problems, but I think it's a crucial part of it. I think that it's one of the better ways that we can use to set what our values mean to our agencies. And ultimately, I feel that we need to convince the agencies to change. We need them to change their system and not want to keep exploiting it. Now, I don't think this is going to happen by winning 3 legal cases. It's going to take a huge shift in how we all think about it, how our governments work, how we oversee agencies, what their role should be in the first place. Should they even exist as we're currently understanding and thinking of them? We're a long, long way off that, but without the law, then I see us in a battle where they have a lot more power. And I want technology to play a big role in that, and that's why everything we do is encrypted, and everything that you do should always, of course, always be encrypted as well, but we need both. And that's why I sue GCHQ, that's why we fight in the courts, to use other tools to also help protect each and every one of us.
Kidding. Yeah. Okay, if you have any more questions, he'll be around after. You can buy him a drink.